He was bleeding out on 50-pound sacks of rice, pointing a silver pistol at her heart. And the 5-year-old girl clinging to his side was the only reason Biara didn't run. The smell hit Biara first. Sharp copper cutting through the basement's usual damp odor of dust and fermenting cabbage. It was 2:14 a.m., and the crushing weight of a double shift at the Golden Lotus BBQ hung on her shoulders like a wet wool coat. She had just unlocked the heavy steel door to the dry storage room, expecting the comforting silence of her secret sanctuary, the place where her yoga mat was hidden behind the inventory. Instead, she found a bloodbath. The man in the ruined bespoke suit was pale, sweat-slicked, his breathing ragged. But what stopped Biara's heart wasn't the gun shaking in his grip. It was the terrified little girl curled into his side, shivering and covered in blood that wasn't hers. Biara took a step back, instinct screaming at her to flee upstairs, to run out into the rain and forget she ever saw this. The man's head snapped up. It was an effort that clearly cost him, but his eyes, they were focused. Deadly. Even dying, he looked like a predator cornered in a trap. He spoke then. Not in English. Not even in the standard Korean the kitchen staff used. He spoke in a jagged, clipped code used by the Solparings, a dialect of street slang and old-world formal honorifics that was supposed to be dead. Balgilil dolio, animyon jugumida. Turn your feet around, or it is death. He assumed she was just a waitress, just a janitor who would hear foreign words and run in terror. Biara looked at the gun. She looked at the blood spreading toward the corner where she slept. Then she looked at the little girl, whose wide eyes were begging for help without making a sound. Biara didn't run. She didn't scream. She stepped fully into the room. The man's finger tightened on the trigger. His eyes widened in shock as Biara raised her hands, palms open, and spoke. She answered him. Not in English, but in his own code. Her accent was flawless, the linguistics degree she'd abandoned years ago rising to the surface like a weapon. I live here, she said. The harsh syllables rolling off her tongue. If you shoot me, you are shooting the only person who has the key to lock this door from the inside. The police are coming. The fire is coming. I am the only wall between you and the grave. The man, Jungi Han, and the dragon of the north side, stared at this homeless waitress in a grease-stained apron as if she were a ghost. His gun wavered. His eyes rolled back. The blood loss finally won. Safe, he whispered, the gun clattering to the concrete. Keep, Bora. Safe. Then he collapsed into the darkness. Biara stood there for a heartbeat, trembling. She looked at the unconscious killer, the weeping child, and the open door to the hallway. She stepped inside, pulled the heavy steel door shut, and turned the deadbolt. Click. Biara didn't just lock the world out. She locked herself in with the devil. And just like that, the trap is set. Welcome back, my midnight wanderers and secret keepers. Before we see if Biara survives the night, take a second to make sure you're subscribed. Hit that like button and let me know in the comments. Where in the world are you hiding out tonight? I love watching our little family of dark romance lovers grow across oceans and time zones. Every share helps us keep bringing you these stories of high-stakes danger and the passion that burns through it. So, get comfortable. Check the locks on your doors, and let's get back to the basement. The silence in the storage room was deafening. Biara leaned her back against the cold steel of the door, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. What have I done? The question bounced around her skull, useless and terrified. She had just locked herself in a 10-by-10 concrete box with a dying mob boss and a gun. A small whimper cut through the dark. It's okay, Biara whispered, her voice shaking. She fumbled for her phone, turning on the flashlight. The beam cut through the gloom, illuminating the scene in harsh white light. The little girl, Bora, hadn't moved. She was still clutching the man's lapel, her face buried in his blood-soaked shirt. Biara knelt beside them, the cold dampness of the floor seeping instantly into her jeans. She ignored the expensive gun lying inches from her knee and reached for the man's neck. His skin was burning. Fever heat, radiating off him in waves, but beneath the heat his pulse was thready and fast. He was bleeding out. "I need to check him," Biara said softly to the child. She switched to Korean, her voice gentle. "Little one, I need you to let go. I need to help your uncle." Bora looked up. Her face was streaked with tears and grime, but she understood the language of comfort. Slowly, with trembling fingers, she released her grip on the suit jacket. Biara moved fast. She didn't have a medical bag. She didn't have sterile equipment. She was a waitress living in a storage closet. But she knew this inventory better than she knew her own history. She grabbed a bottle of high-proof soju from a crate, the expensive stuff the manager kept for VIPs. She grabbed a stack of clean bar towels. Then, she reached into the hidden pocket of her backpack and pulled out the small sewing kit she used to mend her apron. Needle, thread, alcohol. It was barbaric. It was dangerous. It was all they had. Biara used the heavy kitchen shears from her belt to slice open the man's shirt. The buttons popped, skittering across the floor like hail. The wound was ugly, a jagged tear just below his ribs. But it was a through and through. The bullet hadn't stayed inside. "Okay," Biara breathed, pouring the alcohol over her hands, then over the needle. "Okay." She poured the soju directly onto the wound. Jungi Han's body jerked violently, a guttural groan ripping from his throat, even in his unconscious state. His hand lashed out blindly, grabbing Biara's wrist with a grip like iron. Biara gasped, almost dropping the needle. His eyes fluttered open, glassy, unfocused, black as the deepest parts of the ocean. He looked at her, really looked at her, trying to piece together the blurry image of the woman hovering over him. His phone, tucked into the inside pocket of his ruined jacket, buzzed. It wasn't a ringtone. It was a singular jarring alert tone. Jungi's hand trembled as he tried to reach for it, but his strength failed. His arm dropped back to the floor. "Read." "It," he rasped. The command was weak, but the authority was still there. Biara hesitated, then pulled the sleek black device from his pocket. The screen was cracked, but legible. There was no text message, just an audio file icon. She pressed play. A voice crackled through the speaker. It was distorted, heavy with static, and speaking that same complex rapid-fire code. "The exits are covered. The rats are in the trap. Burn the building down if you have to. No survivors." The color drained from Biara's face. She looked at the ceiling, imagining the restaurant above them, imagining the gasoline, imagining the fire. She looked down at Jungi. He was watching her, waiting for the confusion, waiting for her to ask what the gibberish meant. "You can't understand it," he whispered, his eyes closing again. "It's a dead dialect. It says the exits are covered," Biara said, her voice flat and cold. "It says they are going to burn the building down with us inside." Jungi's eyes snapped open. The shock was enough to clear the fog of pain for a single second. He realized then that she wasn't guessing. She knew. He was trapped. He was dying. And this homeless woman with the sewing needle and the sad eyes was the only thing standing between him and the fire. He tried to sit up, groaning as the movement tore at his wound. He reached into his pocket with a shaking hand and pulled out a money clip. It was thick. Thicker than a Bible. "Get us out," he rasped, shoving the cash toward her. Blood smeared across the crisp $100 bills. "There's $50,000 here. It's yours. Take it." "Get us out and disappear." Biara looked at the money. $50,000. It was more than she had made in the last 2 years combined. It was an apartment. It was shoes. It was food. It was a ticket out of this basement, out of this city, out of this life where she was invisible. She reached out, her fingers brushing the cold cash. Then she stopped. She looked around the room. She looked at the yoga mat in the corner. She looked at the sacks of rice that had been her roommates for 6 months. 50,000 would last a year. Maybe 2. And then? Then she would be back here. Back to being nobody. Back to being the help. Back to being afraid. Biara realized something in that dark, blood-scented room. Money ran out. Power lasted forever. She pushed the money away. Jungi blinked, confusion warring with the pain. It is not enough. I don't want a tip, Biara said. Her voice was steady, steel forged in the fires of desperation. She locked eyes with the devil, and for the first time in her life she didn't blink. That money buys me a year of rent. Then I'm back to nothing. You want me to get you out past the men burning this place down? You want me to decode the orders that will keep your niece alive? She leaned in close, so close she could feel the heat of his fever on her face. I want half. Half your money. Half your power. Writing on paper right now. Or I open this door and whistle for the hunters. For a long, agonizing moment, the only sound was the hum of the freezer and Bora's soft whimpers. Jungi stared at Biara, searching for fear, searching for a bluff. He found neither. He saw only the terrifying clarity of a woman who had nothing left to lose. Slowly, painfully, a corner of his mouth ticked up. It wasn't a smile, it was an acknowledgement. Paper, he rasped. And a pen. Biara grabbed her order pad and a cheap ballpoint from her apron. She held it steady as Jungi scribbled 3 lines of Korean characters. His hand shook, but the signature at the bottom was bold, aggressive. The dragon's mark. He shoved the paper into her hand. Half, he breathed. Now get us out. Biara tucked the paper into her bra next to her heart. She didn't have time to celebrate. The smell of smoke was already seeping under the heavy steel door. Acrid. Thick. The audio message hadn't been a threat. It was a promise. The delivery hatch, Biara said, moving to the far wall. It leads to the alley behind the dumpsters. It's the only way. She shoved aside a stack of crates, revealing a small, rusted industrial hatch. It was fitted with a heavy-duty electronic keypad, blinking an angry red light. Biara froze. It's never locked, she whispered. The delivery guys leave it open. System override, Jungi said from the floor, his voice fading. If the alarm triggers, all external locks engage. High security. Biara pounded on the keypad. Nothing. Just a synthesized voice barking from the speaker in that same rapid-fire dialect. System lockdown. Voice authorization required. Speak the daily cipher. Biara looked at Jungi. His eyes were closed, his head lolling back. He was unconscious. He couldn't speak. He couldn't authorize anything. The smoke was getting thicker now, curling along the ceiling like gray snakes. Bora started to cough, a dry, hacking sound that tore at Biara's chest. Speak the daily cipher, the machine repeated. Biara closed her eyes. She thought back to the audio message on the phone. The killer had said something specific. The rats are in the trap. It was a phrase, but it was phrased oddly. A poetic structure used in old Korean literature. She looked at the keypad. It wasn't asking for a password. It was asking for the counterphrase, the response to the code. Biara took a breath, tasting smoke. She leaned close to the speaker, pitching her voice lower, mimicking the cadence she had heard Jungi use, mimicking the arrogance, the authority. Burn the mountain, she said in perfect formal dialect, but save the tiger. Silence. Then, a green light. The hatch clicked and hissed, popping open a few inches. Cold, wet night air rushed in, mixing with the smoke. Wake up. Biara grabbed Jungi's collar, shaking him. We're moving. She grabbed Bora first, lifting the child through the hatch into the rain-slicked alley. Then she turned back for the man who had just promised her the world. He was heavy, dead weight, but adrenaline gave her strength she didn't know she possessed. She dragged him, shoved him, and finally tumbled out into the alley beside him. They were out. They were alive. But as Biara looked up at the smoke billowing from the restaurant vents, she knew the night wasn't over. She touched the paper hidden against her skin. She had survived the fire. Now she had to survive the empire she had just bought into. The Chicago rain didn't wash away the sins of the night. It just made them colder. Biara dragged Jungi Han through the sludge of the back alley, her boots slipping on grease and wet cardboard. He was heavy, a dead weight of muscle and expensive wool that threatened to pull her down into the filth with him. Bora clung to the back of Biara's apron, sobbing quietly, a tiny shadow tethered to their desperate escape. They needed wheels. They needed distance. And they needed it 5 minutes ago. The alley behind the Golden Lotus was lined with dumpsters and the parked cars of the late shift staff. Biara scanned the row. The manager's Lexus was there, gleaming under the security light. Too risky. It had a tracker. She knew because he bragged about it constantly. Next to it was the dishwasher's rusted Honda Civic. Biara knew that car. She knew the lock on the driver's side was broken because she'd helped him shimmy it open with a coat hanger 2 weeks ago when he locked his keys inside. "Stay here," she whispered to Bora, tucking the child behind a stack of pallets. "Don't make a sound." Biara laid Jungi against the brick wall. He was conscious, barely. His eyes were slits of obsidian, tracking her movements with a mixture of pain and calculation. He watched as she approached the Honda, pulled a hairpin from her messy bun, and jimmied the lock mechanism with a practiced flick of her wrist. It popped. She didn't have a key, but she had a brother named Booker. And Booker had taught her that you didn't need a key if you knew which wires to kiss together under the steering column. It was a skill she had hated learning, a relic of a childhood spent waiting for police sirens, but tonight it was the difference between life and death. The engine sputtered, coughed, and roared to life. It sounded like a dying lawnmower, but to Biara, it sounded like a chariot. She shoved Jungi into the passenger seat, his long legs cramping in the small space. She buckled Bora into the back, covering the shivering child with a pile of dirty laundry the dishwasher had left on the seat. "Where?" Biara gripped the wheel, her knuckles white. "Where is safe?" Jungi's head lolled against the headrest. Blood was soaking through the fresh bandages she had just applied. "No." "Safe houses," he rasped. "All compromised. Go to the blind spot." "The what?" "Under the I-90 overpass, the maintenance yard." Biara didn't ask questions. She threw the car into reverse and peeled out of the alley just as the first tongue of orange flame licked up the side of the restaurant building. In the rearview mirror, she saw the back door kick open. 2 men in dark raincoats stepped out. Guns raised. They were too late. Biara was already a ghost in the traffic. The drive was a blur of adrenaline and paranoia. Every pair of headlights behind them looked like a hit squad. Every siren made her heart stop. But the maintenance yard under the I-90 overpass was deserted, a graveyard of rusted plows and salt trucks hidden from the city lights by the massive concrete belly of the highway. It wasn't a home. It wasn't warm. But it was dry, and it was dark. Biara killed the engine. The silence that rushed back in was heavy, filled only by the rhythmic thumping of tires overhead and the ragged sound of Jungi's breathing. She turned in her seat. "We're here. We're safe." Bora didn't answer. The little girl had curled into a ball beneath the laundry, her thumb in her mouth, her eyes wide and staring at nothing. Biara's heart broke. She knew that look. She had worn that look when she was 5, watching her mother cry over bills, watching Booker get dragged out of the house by angry men. "Hey," Biara said softly, reaching back to stroke the girl's matted hair. "Are you hungry?" I think I have magic peaches." She reached into her apron pocket. She had stolen a can of peaches from the storage room right before they left. She popped the tab. The sweet, syrupy smell filled the stale air of the car, cutting through the scent of blood and wet dog. Bora sniffed. She sat up slowly. "Eat." Biara handed her the can and a plastic spoon she found in the glove box. "It makes you invisible to bad guys. That's a secret rule." Bora took a small bite, then another. The sugar seemed to bring a little color back to her gray cheeks. In the front seat, Jungi was watching them. His head was turned to the side, his gaze fixed on Biara. The fever was making his eyes bright, almost luminescent, in the shadows. He wasn't looking at her like a waitress anymore. He wasn't looking at her like a tool he could use. He was looking at her like he had never seen a woman before. "You are good with her," he whispered. The words were slurred. Heavy. I raised myself, Biara said, turning back to face him. She pulled the bottle of soju from her bag. She'd grabbed that too. And I raised my brother until he got too big to listen. Drink. She held the bottle to his lips. He drank, grimacing as the alcohol burned his throat. My sister, Jungi said, the admission quiet, almost lost under the noise of the highway. Bora's mother. She was the soft one. She hated this life. Hated me for being part of it. She's dead? Biara asked blunt. Tonight, at the table, she took the bullet meant for me. His hand clenched into a fist on his thigh. I grabbed Bora. I ran. I left my sister's body on the floor of a BBQ restaurant. The grief in his voice was a physical thing, jagged and raw. Biara looked at this man, this killer who commanded armies, and saw the crack in the armor. He wasn't a monster. He was a man drowning in guilt. You saved the part of her that mattered, Biara said. She reached out, intending to check his temperature, but her hand lingered on his forehead. His skin was hot, but the contact felt electric, grounding. You saved her daughter. That counts. Jungi leaned into her touch, just a fraction of an inch. A surrender. Does it? It has to, Biara whispered. Ocheyo, or else we're just surviving for nothing. For a moment the car felt like a tiny suspended world, a strange broken family unit huddled together against the dark. The waitress, the mob boss, and the orphan, bound by blood and a contract written on a guest check. Then, the sound changed. In the back seat, the rhythmic sound of eating stopped. It was replaced by a wheeze, a high-pitched whistling sound that made Biara's blood run cold. She spun around. Bora was clutching her throat. Her mouth was open, gasping like a fish out of water, but no air was getting in. Her face was turning a terrifying shade of red. The can of peaches dropped from her hand, syrup spilling onto the seat. Bora? Biara unbuckled her, pulling the child into her lap. Bora, look at me. Breathe. The girl shook her head, panic in her eyes. Her chest heaved, ribs straining against her skin, but nothing happened. What is it? Jungi tried to twist around, agony flashing across his face. What's happening? She can't breathe. Biara checked the girl's mouth. Clear. No food. No obstruction. It's not the peaches. It's tight. Her chest is tight. Asthma, Jungi gasped, the realization hitting him like a blow. She has severe asthma. The basement smoke triggered it. Where is her inhaler? Biara demanded, patting down the girl's pockets. Jungi, where is the bag? Jungi's face went white. The restaurant. We left it under the table when the shooting started. Biara cursed, a string of words that would have made a sailor blush. She held Bora tighter, feeling the child's terror vibrating through her own bones. This wasn't just a cough. This was an attack. A bad one. Bora's lips were already starting to turn blue. She needs albuterol, Biara said, her mind racing. She needs a nebulizer. Now. Hospital, Jungi said, reaching for the door handle. Take her. No, Biara grabbed his arm. Think. The audio message said, no survivors. They are watching the hospitals. They know you have the girl. If I walk into an ER with a gunshot victim's child, the police call the hunters and we all die. She dies if we do nothing, Jungi roared, the effort making him cough up blood. Biara looked at Bora. The girl's eyes were rolling back. The wheeze was becoming a silent struggle. I can get it, Biara said. There's a 24-hour pharmacy 3 blocks from here. I know the night clerk. I can get an inhaler. You have no prescription, Jungi argued. They won't sell it. Watch me. Biara shoved the car door open. The rain hit her instantly, soaking her to the bone. Keep her sitting up. Do not let her lie down. Talk to her. Keep her awake. Biara. Jungi grabbed her wrist. His grip was weak, trembling. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the blood-stained money clip again. Take it. Bribe them. Biara took the cash this time. She shoved it deep into her apron. "If I'm not back in 15 minutes, she said, looking him in the eye, "take the car. Leave me." "No," Jungi said. It was a vow. "We wait." Biara slammed the door and ran. She ran through the rain, her boots splashing through puddles that looked like oil slicks. Her lungs burned, her legs screamed, but all she could hear was that high-pitched wheeze. Keep Bora safe. That was the deal. The pharmacy was a beacon of fluorescent misery on the corner of 5th and Main. Biara skidded to a stop outside the glass doors, wiping the rain and grime from her face. She tried to smooth her hair. She tried to look less like a woman who had just crawled out of a burning building and more like a tired older sister. She pushed inside. The bell chimed, a cheerful, mocking sound. The store was empty except for a security guard dozing by the magazines and the pharmacist behind the high counter. He was new. Not the guy she knew. This man was young, sharp-eyed, wearing glasses that reflected the harsh lights. Biara marched to the counter. "I need an albuterol inhaler. Ventolin, Pro-Air, anything." The pharmacist didn't even look up from his computer. "Prescription?" "I don't have it on me," Biara lied, leaning over the counter. "My niece is in the car. She's having an attack. It's bad. Please." "I can pay cash." The pharmacist looked up then. He took in her appearance, the soot-stained apron, the wet hair, the wild look in her eyes. He saw the Golden Lotus logo on her chest. "I can't dispense without a script, miss," he said, his voice bored. "Store policy. Go to the ER." "I can't go to the ER." Biara lowered her voice. "She can't breathe. Just sell me one. I have money." She pulled out a $100 bill from the clip. "Keep the change. Just give me the plastic tube." The pharmacist's eyes narrowed. He looked at the $100 bill. It was stained with something dark, something rusty. Blood. He stepped back. His hand moved below the counter. "I think you need to leave," he said, his voice tighter, "before I call the police." Biara saw his eyes flick to the silent alarm button. Panic flared in her chest, hot and bright. But she crushed it. Panic wouldn't save Bora. She looked around. The pharmacy was lined with shelves. Behind the counter on the rack, she saw the blue boxes. Inhalers. Right there. 5 feet away. She looked at the pharmacist. He was a stickler. A rule follower. He wouldn't be bribed. He wouldn't be charmed. So, Biara stopped being a waitress. She started being the partner of a mob boss. She leaned in, her face inches from the plexiglass divider. She dropped the desperate act. Her face went cold, hard, stone. "You speak Korean?" she asked. The pharmacist blinked, surprised. He was Asian American, but she was guessing. "What?" "I asked if you speak the language of your grandfather," she said in perfect, biting Korean. He froze. "Good," she continued in the dialect, "because I am going to tell you what happens next. You're going to put that box on the counter. I am going to leave this money, and you're going to forget you ever saw me. Because the man waiting in my car, he isn't sick. He's the dragon. And if his niece stops breathing, he won't call the police. He will come in here and burn this store to the ground with you inside." It was a bluff. A massive, terrifying bluff. Jungi couldn't walk, let alone burn a store, but the pharmacist didn't know that. He looked at this woman who spoke the gangster dialect with perfect fluency, whose money was stained with blood, whose eyes held the absolute certainty of violence. He swallowed hard. His hand moved away from the alarm button. He reached back, grabbed a blue box, and slid it across the counter. "Take it," he whispered in English. "Just go." Biara slapped the bloodied bill on the counter. "Thank you." She grabbed the box and turned to run, but as she reached the automatic doors, she saw it. A black SUV rolled slowly past the front of the store. It didn't look like a police car. It had tinted windows and no plates. It slowed down as it passed the pharmacy, the passenger window rolling down. Biara threw herself behind a display of greeting cards. Her heart hammered against the floor tiles. The SUV lingered for a second. then accelerated away into the rain. They were hunting. They were grid-searching the neighborhood. They knew she hadn't gone far. Biara crawled to the door, waited until the taillights vanished, and then sprinted back into the night. She reached the underpass 3 minutes later, gasping for air, clutching the blue box like a holy relic. She ripped the car door open. Bora was slumped against Jungi's chest. Her eyes were closed. The wheezing had stopped. "Bora?" Biara screamed, tearing the packaging open with her teeth. Jungi looked up. He was gray, terrified. She stopped making noise just now. Biara didn't hesitate. She shook the inhaler, primed it, and jammed it into the little girl's mouth. "Breathe, baby, come on." She pressed the canister. Puffs of medicine shot into the girl's throat. Nothing. "Come on." Biara pressed it again. She rubbed the girl's sternum. "Bora, wake up." A second passed. An eternity. Then, a gasp. Bora's body arched. She sucked in a breath. Ragged, deep, desperate, then another, then a cough. Biara slumped against the steering wheel, tears finally spilling over. "She's okay. She's okay." Jungi let out a breath that sounded like a sob. He rested his forehead against the child's hair. "You did it." "We have to move," Biara said, wiping her face with her sleeve. "I saw a black SUV. They're circling the blocks. They know we're in this radius." "Where?" Jungi asked. "We have nowhere." Biara looked at the rain lashing the windshield. She thought about the $50,000 in her pocket. She thought about the promise of power. But right now, they didn't need power. They needed a ghost. "I have a brother," Biara said quietly. "Booker. He lives in the projects on the south side. It's a war zone. The police don't go there. Your enemies won't look for a billionaire in a tenement block." "Can you trust him?" Jungi asked. Biara hesitated. She thought about Booker's gambling, his debts, the way he looked at her like she was an ATM machine. "He's blood," she said, starting the engine. "And right now, blood is all we have." She put the car in gear. As they merged back onto the highway, heading south toward the crumbling towers of the projects, Biara felt a cold knot of dread in her stomach. She had saved them from the fire. She had saved them from the sickness. But as she drove toward her brother's house, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was driving them straight into the trap. The south side of Chicago didn't sleep. It just waited with one eye open. Biara navigated the stolen Honda through streets that looked more like the aftermath of a bombing than a neighborhood. The streetlights here were shattered glass skeletons, leaving long stretches of road swallowed by darkness. The potholes were deep enough to swallow a tire, jarring Jungi's wounded side with every impact. "We're close," Biara whispered. Though she wasn't sure who she was reassuring, Jungi, the sleeping child, or herself. She pulled up to the curb, a block away from the towering, monolithic housing project known locally as the Stacks. It was a fortress of concrete and misery, 20 stories of peeling paint and broken windows rising into the rainy sky. "This is it?" Jungi asked. He was clutching his side, his face slick with sweat. The adrenaline from the pharmacy run was fading, leaving him gray and trembling. "It's not a palace," Biara said, killing the engine. "But the police don't come in here without a SWAT team. And your enemies? They stick to the penthouses and the ports. They won't look for the dragon in the gutter." "The gutter is where rats breed," Jungi murmured, but he opened the door. Getting inside was a tactical nightmare. The front door lock was busted. The lobby smelled of stale urine, bleach, and weed. The elevator, predictably, was out of order, taped off with yellow caution tape that looked decades old. "Booker's on the 9th floor," Biara said, looking at the stairs. "Can you make it?" Jungi adjusted his grip on the gun hidden beneath his coat. "I have walked on broken legs before. I can walk on a hole in my side." The climb was a slow, agonizing procession. Biara carried Bora, who was groggy and heavy with sleep. Jungi trailed behind, one hand on the railing, the other pressed to his bandage. Every landing was a victory. Every shadow made them freeze. By the time they reached 9B, Biara's arms were burning, and Jungi was leaving small, wet drops of blood on the linoleum. Biara didn't knock. She used the secret knock. Too fast, one slow, too fast, that she and Booker had used since they were kids, hiding from their father's temper. Silence. Then, the sound of a chain sliding. 3 locks turning. The door cracked open. Booker stood there. He looked older than 30. His eyes were sunken, rimmed with red exhaustion. He was wearing a stained tank top, and the apartment behind him was dark, lit only by the flickering blue light of a television. Bye. He blinked, rubbing his face. It's 3 a.m. What the hell? Let us in, Book, Biara whispered, shouldering past him. We're in trouble. Booker stepped back, confusion clouding his face. Then he saw Jungi. He saw the expensive, ruined suit. He saw the blood. He saw the way the man stood, wounded but dangerous, scanning the room for threats before he even fully entered. Who the hell is that? Booker's voice pitched up. Bye, you can't bring heat here. I got situations of my own. He's a friend, Biara lied, locking the door behind them. She engaged all 3 deadbolts. He's hurt. We just need a place to crash for a few hours, just until the sun comes up. She laid Bora on the sagging couch. The little girl curled up instantly, clutching her inhaler in her sleep. Booker was pacing now, his eyes darting from Biara to Jungi to the door. He looked jittery, high-strung. Biara had seen him like this before when he was waiting on a payout, or dodging a loan shark, but this felt different. This felt desperate. You don't understand, Booker said, wiping his sweaty palms on his jeans. Things are hot right now. The Zhurdevs are sweeping the block. The gangs are edgy. We won't stay long, Biara promised. She went to the kitchenette, filling a glass with tap water for Jungi. Just let us rest. Please, Book, I have money. I can pay you. At the word money, Booker stopped pacing. He looked at her, really looked at her. Money? 50,000, Biara said softly. She patted her apron pocket. I have cash. It's yours. Just let us stay. A strange expression crossed Booker's face. Relief? No. Something sharper. Hunger. 50 grand, he muttered. He looked at Jungi again. This time he wasn't looking at the blood. He was looking at the watch on Jungi's wrist, a Patek Philippe worth more than the entire building. He was looking at the ink creeping up Jungi's neck. He's Korean, Booker said. It wasn't a question. Yeah, Biara said, handing the water to Jungi. So, I got a text an hour ago, Booker said. His voice went quiet. Too quiet. Everyone in the underground got it. Mass blast from the Chongpakpa, from the Zhurdevs, from everyone. Biara's stomach dropped. Booker. They're looking for a Korean man, Booker continued, taking a step back toward the hallway table. Wounded, wearing a suit, and a black woman, a waitress. Jungi set the glass down. He didn't make a sound, but his hand moved inside his jacket. Booker, listen to me. Biara stepped between them. Don't do this. The bounty is $2 million, Bye, Booker said. His voice cracked. $2 million. He picked up his phone from the table. He turned the screen toward them. It was a wanted poster, crude and digital, flashing with the promise of a payday that would change a life. I owe people, Booker said, tears welling in his eyes. I owe bad people. They're going to break my legs, Bye. They're going to kill me. This is God. This is a miracle. I am your sister, Biara screamed. You would sell me? No. Booker shook his head frantically. Not you. Just him. They just want the Korean. And the kid. The text says the woman can walk. You can walk by. You can leave with 50 grand and I get the 2 million. We both win. There is no winning. Jungi spoke for the first time. His voice was gravel. If you call them, we all die. They don't leave witnesses. Shut up. Booker reached into the drawer of the hallway table. He pulled out a revolver. cheap, snub-nosed, shaking in his hand. Biara froze. Booker, put it down. I can't. Booker was crying now, sweat dripping down his nose. I can't go back to being broke, Bi. I can't be afraid every time I open my door. Move away from him. No. Biara stood her ground. Booker's eyes darted around the room. He was panicked. He needed leverage. He needed to make her move. His eyes landed on the couch. No, Biara whispered. Booker, don't you dare. Booker lunged. He wasn't graceful, but he was fast. He grabbed Bora by the arm, yanking the sleeping child off the cushions. Bora screamed, a high, terrified sound that shattered the room. Get back, Booker shouted, jamming the gun against the little girl's temple. He dragged her backward toward the door. Get back, or I swear to God, I'll do it! I'll do it! Bora was wailing, her legs kicking, her tiny hands clawing at Booker's arm. Let her go. Biara took a step forward, her hands raised. She's a baby, Book. She's 5 years old. She's a ticket, Booker screamed. He was backed against the door now, wild-eyed. She's my ticket out. I'm calling them. I'm calling the number. He fumbled with his phone with his left hand while keeping the gun pressed to Bora's head with his right. Biara looked at her brother. She saw the boy who had taught her to ride a bike. The boy who had split his lunch with her when there wasn't enough food at home. The boy who had protected her from the neighborhood bullies. But that boy was gone. Consumed by debt. Consumed by fear. Eaten alive by a city that didn't care. What stood before her wasn't her brother. It was a desperate animal cornered by its own mistakes. She looked at Jungi. The boss was leaning against the kitchenette counter, barely standing, but his gun was out. He was holding it steady with 2 hands, aiming past Biara. He couldn't take the shot. Biara was in the line of fire, and Booker was shielding himself with the child. Jungi's eyes met Biara's. There was a question in them, a terrible, silent question. He is your blood. Do I take the shot? Biara looked at Bora. The little girl's eyes were locked on Biara, filled with absolute terror. Keep Bora safe. That was the deal. That was the price of half the empire. Biara looked at Booker one last time. Booker, please. Let her go. I'm sorry, Bi, Booker wept, his thumb dialing the number. I have to. Biara closed her eyes and she nodded. She dropped to the floor. The sound was deafening in the small apartment. Bang. 1 shot. Booker's head snapped back. A spray of red painted the peeling wallpaper behind him. He didn't scream. He just crumbled. His legs gave out. Poich roared and he slid down the doorframe, the gun clattering from his limp hand. The phone dropped, sliding across the floor, the call never connected. Bora fell with him, landing on her knees, screaming. Biara stayed on the floor for a second, the ringing in her ears drowning out everything else. She stared at her brother's body. He looked smaller in death, just a pile of clothes and bad choices. Jungi moved. He crossed the room, stepping over the body without hesitation. He scooped up Bora, checking her quickly for injuries. She's fine, he said. His voice was void of emotion. Pure business. Biara, we have to go. The gunshot. Neighbors will call. Biara scrambled to her feet. She felt numb, cold, like her own heart had stopped beating. She walked to the door. She had to step over Booker's legs to get out. She looked down at his face. His eyes were open, staring at the ceiling, surprised. I'm sorry, she whispered. She reached down and took the $50,000 from her pocket. She dropped the bloodied stack of cash onto his chest. You got your payday, Book. She turned away. Jungi was waiting in the hallway, holding the sobbing child. He watched Biara emerge, his face grim. He didn't offer comfort. He didn't offer false words. He knew what she had just done. She had traded her past for her future. She had cut the last tie that bound her to this life. Can you drive? He asked. Biara looked at her hands. They were steady. Terrifyingly steady. Yes, she said. Then drive, Jungi said. We are ghosts now. They descended the stairs in silence, leaving the dead man and the money behind in apartment 9B. The south side was still waiting with one eye open, but Biara wasn't afraid of the dark anymore. She had just become part of it. The city limits of Chicago blurred into the indistinguishable gray of the industrial outskirts. Biara drove until her hands cramped around the steering wheel, until the adrenaline crash hit her so hard her teeth started chattering. She didn't look in the rearview mirror. She knew what she would see if she did: the ghost of apartment 9B, the phantom echo of a gunshot, and the face of a brother who had chosen money over blood. Jungi didn't speak. He sat in the passenger seat, pressing a fresh towel from the back seat against his side. He watched the road, but every few seconds his eyes flicked to Biara. He was assessing her, watching for the break, watching for the moment she would pull the car over and scream. But Biara didn't scream. She just drove. They found the Starlight Motel huddled off exit 44 like a dying animal. The neon sign buzzed with a headache-inducing hum, the letter L flickering on and off, turning the name into Starlight. It was the kind of place where people went to hide, or to die, or to buy things that couldn't be sold in the daylight. It was perfect. Biara parked the stolen Honda around the back, wedging it between a dumpster and a rusted pickup truck. She killed the engine. "We are here," she whispered. Her voice sounded brittle, like dried leaves stepping on concrete. Jungi nodded. He reached into the back seat and scooped up the sleeping Bora. The child was heavy, dead weight in her exhaustion, but Jungi held her like she was made of glass. They paid cash for a room at the far end of the row, room 112. The night clerk, a man with yellow eyes and a cigarette dangling from his lip, didn't ask for ID. He just looked at the $100 bill Biara slid across the counter, looked at the blood on Jungi's coat, and slid a key back. He had seen worse. The room smelled of stale smoke, bleach, and desperation. The carpet was a suspicious shade of brown, and the wallpaper was peeling in long sunburned strips. But there was a lock on the door and a heavy curtain on the window. Biara locked the door. She engaged the chain. She shoved a heavy wooden chair under the handle. Then, and only then, did she let her shoulders drop. Jungi laid Bora on the bed closest to the wall. He took off her shoes, covered her with the thin, scratchy blanket, and brushed a strand of hair off her forehead. For a killer, his hands were agonizingly gentle. Then he turned to Biara. "You are shaking," he said. Biara looked down at her hands. They were trembling so violently she couldn't make a fist, and they were red, stained with the blood of the man she had just left on a linoleum floor. "I need to wash," she whispered. "I need to get it off." She stumbled into the bathroom. The fluorescent light flickered, casting a sickly green pallor over the cracked tiles. Biara turned on the tap. The water sputtered, brown at first, then clear and freezing cold. She shoved her hands under the stream. She scrubbed. She used the tiny bar of motel soap, digging her fingernails into her skin until it burned, until it turned raw and pink. But the feeling wouldn't go away. The feeling of the money clip hitting Booker's chest. The feeling of betrayal. She didn't hear the door open. She just felt the presence. Heat. Strength. Jungi stood behind her. He reached out and turned off the tap. The sudden silence was louder than a scream. "Stop," he said. His voice was rough but soft. "You will scrub the skin off your bones, Biara. It is gone." "It's not gone," she choked out, staring at the drain. "He was my brother, Jungi. He taught me how to tie my shoes. He was going to kill a 5-year-old for a lottery ticket." "He was already dead," Jungi said. He stepped closer, trapping her between his body and the sink. "Not physically, but the man you knew? The brother? He died a long time ago. The city ate him. Tonight was just the funeral." Biara turned around. They were inches apart in the tiny, grimy bathroom. She could smell the gunpowder on him, the metallic tang of his own blood, and beneath it all, the scent of expensive sandalwood soap and rain. She looked up at him. His face was gray with pain, sweat beading on his forehead, but his eyes were clear. They were looking at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "You saved us," he said. "You made the choice that kings are afraid to make. You chose the future over the past. I feel like a monster, she whispered. Jungi raised his hand. His fingers calloused and scarred, brushed against her cheek. He traced the line of her jaw, wiping away a stray tear. Then you are a monster, he murmured. And so am I. We are the monsters who keep the children safe while the angels sleep. The touch sent a jolt of electricity through Biara's body, shattering the numbness. It was sudden, overwhelming heat. She didn't think. She couldn't think. She leaned into his hand, closing her eyes, desperate for contact that didn't hurt, for a touch that wasn't violent. Jungi's thumb brushed her lip. His breathing hitched. Biara, he warned, his voice dropping to a growl. Do not look at me like that. Why? She breathed, opening her eyes. Because I am a man who has nothing to offer you but blood and running. Because if I kiss you now, I will not be able to stop. And you deserve better than a dying mob boss in a cheap motel. I don't want better, Biara said, grabbing his lapels. I want to feel alive. I just watched my life burn down, Jungi. Make me feel like I'm still here. She pulled him down. The kiss wasn't gentle. It was a collision. It tasted of grief and adrenaline and desperation. Jungi groaned, a sound torn from his chest, and his arms wrapped around her, pulling her flush against him. He kissed her like he was drowning, like she was the only air left in the world. Biara's hands tangled in his hair, pulling him closer. For a moment, the motel room disappeared. The hunters disappeared. Booker disappeared. There was only this heat, this fire, this man who made her feel powerful instead of invisible. His hand slid down her back, pressing her hips against the sink. The gun in his waistband dug into her stomach, a cold reminder of who he was, but she didn't care. She wanted the danger. She wanted him. Then a sound shattered the world. A sharp digital ping. Jungi froze. He pulled back, his chest heaving, his lips swollen and red. His eyes were blown wide, blown black with desire. But the soldier in him had already taken over. The phone, he whispered. Biara blinked, disoriented. The phone. The encrypted device they had taken from the restaurant. It was sitting on the edge of the sink where she had left it. It pinged again. A notification. Jungi stepped back, his hand instantly going to his weapon. He picked up the phone. The file is decrypted, he said, his voice flat. The final translation. The algorithm finished running. The moment was gone. The heat evaporated, replaced by the cold dread of reality. Biara smoothed her apron, her hand shaking for a different reason now. Play it, she said. Jungi tapped the screen. A voice filled the tiny bathroom. It wasn't the distorted, masked voice from earlier. It was clear, crisp, feminine, and it was speaking Korean. Jungi, my love, my regret. If you are hearing this, it means you survived the fire. I'm impressed. I always knew you were hard to kill. Biara watched Jungi's face, all the color drained from it. He looked like he had been struck by lightning. Did you really think you could leave? The voice purred. Did you think you could take the brat and play house? The syndicate needs a king, Jungi. And if the king refuses to rule, then the queen must rise. The voice paused. A soft, chilling laugh. I am coming for you. I know about the maintenance yard. I know about the Honda. I know about the South Side. You are predictable, darling. You always run to the same shadows. Give me the girl, and I will make your death quick. Keep her, and I will peel the skin from your bones. The message ended. Jungi leaned against the doorframe, looking like a man who had just been stabbed in the heart. Who is she? Biara asked, though she already knew the answer. She could hear the history in the woman's voice, the intimacy. Yoon Ji-woo, Jungi whispered. The name sounded like a curse. My ex-fiancée, the woman you left the life for? The woman I left because she was the devil, Jungi corrected. She wanted the throne. She wanted the war. I refused, so she killed my sister to force my hand. He looked at the phone, then at Biara. She knows, he said. She tracked the phone. Or the car. It doesn't matter. She knows where we are. Biara ran to the window. She peeled back the edge of the heavy curtain. Outside, the rain had stopped. The parking lot was quiet. Too quiet. The night clerk was gone from the front desk window. The lights in the parking lot had been cut. And rolling silently into the lot, headlights off, were 3 black SUVs. "They are here," Biara said, her voice calm. The fear had burned out of her. Now there was only calculation. 3 cars, maybe 12 men. Jungi checked his gun. He pulled the slide back. Empty. He checked the spare magazine in his pocket. 2 rounds. 2 bullets against an army. He looked at Biara. Then he looked at the bed where Bora was sleeping. "Take the girl," he said. "What?" "Take Bora. Put her in the bathtub. Cover her with the mattress. Lock the bathroom door." "And you?" Biara asked. Jungi buttoned his ruined jacket. He wiped the blood from his lip where she had kissed him. He stood tall, the pain in his side ignored, the exhaustion buried. He looked every inch the dragon of the north side. "I'm going to go out there," he said. "I'm going to buy you time. When the shooting starts, you run. You take the child and you run out the back window." "No," Biara shook her head. "No. We stick together." "That was the deal. The deal is void," Jungi said softly. He cupped her face in his hand. His thumb traced her cheekbone one last time. "You wanted half the empire, Biara. But tonight, all I can give you is a head start." He kissed her forehead. A benediction. A goodbye. Then he turned and walked to the door. He undid the chain. He moved the chair. He opened the door and stepped out into the neon-lit walkway. Biara watched him go. She stood in the center of the motel room, her heart hammering. She looked at the bathroom. She looked at the sleeping child. Run. That's what he said. Hide. Survive. She looked around the room. Her eyes landed on the bedside lamp. It was an old, heavy thing. Brass base. Solid. She ripped the cord from the wall. She wasn't a waitress anymore. She wasn't a victim. She was a partner. And partners didn't let partners die alone. Biara gripped the lamp like a baseball bat, and she followed him. Outside, the air was cold and smelled of ozone. Jungi stood in the center of the walkway, his hands raised, showing he was empty. Below, in the parking lot, the SUVs had formed a semicircle. Men in tactical gear stood behind the doors, weapons raised. And stepping out of the center vehicle was a woman. She was beautiful. Terrifyingly beautiful. She wore a white trench coat that was pristine despite the mud and the grime of the city. Her hair was slicked back, her lips painted a blood red that matched the neon sign above. Yoon Ji-woo. "Hello, darling," she called out. Her voice carried in the silence. "You look terrible." "I have had a bad night," Jungi replied. His voice was steady. "Leave the civilians, Ji-woo. This is between us." "It is always between us," she smiled. "But I don't leave loose ends. You know that." "Where is the waitress?" "Where's the brat?" "Gone," Jungi lied. "I put them on a bus hours ago. It is just me." Ji-woo tisked. She pulled a gun from her coat. A gold-plated Desert Eagle. Flashy, brutal. "I don't believe you," she said. "But it doesn't matter. I will find them after I step over your corpse." She raised the gun. Jungi didn't flinch. He didn't beg. He just stared at her, ready to die on his feet. "On your knees, Jungi," Ji-woo commanded. "I want to see you beg. I want the great dragon to crawl." Jungi hesitated. The red dots of a dozen laser sights danced on his chest. He had no choice. Slowly, painfully, he lowered himself to his knees on the concrete walkway. Ji-woo laughed, a sound like breaking glass. She walked toward the stairs, heading up to the walkway. She wanted to do this close. She wanted to look him in the eye. She climbed the stairs, her heels clicking on the metal. She walked down the balcony, the gun trained on Jungi's forehead. She stopped 3 feet away. "Any last words, my love?" she asked. "Go to hell," Jungi said. "I'm already running it," she smirked. She tightened her finger on the trigger. She didn't see the shadow move in the doorway behind her. She didn't see the homeless waitress step out into the flickering neon light. Biara didn't scream. She didn't announce herself. She swung. She swung the heavy brass lamp with every ounce of rage, grief, and desperation she possessed. She put the weight of her brother's death behind it. She put the fear of the fire behind it. Crack! The base of the lamp connected with the back of Yoon Ji-woo's head with a sickening thud. The villainess crumbled. She dropped instantly, her eyes rolling back, the gold gun skittering across the concrete. The men in the parking lot shouted. Laser sights swung wildly. Biara didn't freeze. She dropped the lamp and dove for the gun. She scrambled on her knees, skinning them on the rough concrete, and grabbed the heavy, cold metal of the Desert Eagle. She rolled onto her back, sitting up beside the kneeling Jungi. She leveled the gun over the railing, aiming down at the confused hit squad. "Hold fire!" she screamed in Korean. Her voice echoed off the building, loud and commanding. "Hold fire, or the Queen dies." The men froze. They saw their leader unconscious on the ground. They saw the crazy woman in the dirty apron holding a hand cannon against the back of Ji-woo's skull. Jungi looked up at her. He looked at the woman standing over his ex-fiancé's body. He looked at the waitress who had refused to run. Biara looked down at him. Her eyes were wild, her chest heaving. "Get up, partner," she snarled. "We have a council meeting to crash." Jungi smiled. It was a terrifying, blood-soaked smile. He stood up. He took the gun from her shaking hand, but he didn't push her away. He stood shoulder to shoulder with her. And for the first time in the history of the Seoul-pa rings, the dragon wasn't standing alone. The black SUV cut through the Chicago rain like a shark swimming through ink. Biara was behind the wheel. She had never driven a car this expensive, this heavy. It felt like driving a tank. In the passenger seat, Jungi Han was reloading the Desert Eagle Biara had wrestled from his ex-fiancé. His movements were mechanical, precise. Click. Slide. Snap. He wasn't looking at Biara. He was looking at the road ahead, his mind already calculating the angles of the room they were about to walk into. In the back seat, bound with zip ties cut from the tactical gear of her own men, Yoon Ji-woo was waking up. She groaned, shifting against the leather. The back of her head was matted with blood where the brass lamp had connected. She blinked, disoriented, the passing streetlights casting rhythmic shadows across her face. "You're making a mistake," Ji-woo slurred. Her voice had lost its silk. Now it was just jagged glass. "You can't walk into the council. They will skin you alive." "Quiet," Jungi said. He didn't turn around. "They think you're dead, Jungi," she spat. "They've already divided your territory. If you walk in there with her..." She looked at Biara's reflection in the rearview mirror. "With a waitress? A peasant? They will laugh before they shoot you." Biara tightened her grip on the steering wheel. She caught Ji-woo's eye in the mirror. "Let them laugh," Biara said. "It'll make it easier to see their teeth." Ji-woo fell silent, stunned by the coldness in the other woman's voice. This wasn't the terrified girl who had hidden in a basement. This was something new. Something forged in the fire of apartment 9B. "Where are we going?" Ji-woo whispered. "Full circle," Jungi answered. "The Golden Lotus." Biara glanced at him. "The restaurant? It burned down." "The basement didn't," Jungi said. "And neither did the tea house next door. The council meets where the tea is poured. They will be there waiting for confirmation of my death." Biara nodded. She pushed the accelerator. The engine roared, responding to her rage. They dropped Bora off 3 blocks away at an all-night diner. Biara knew the waitress there, an older woman named Mrs. Gable who had lost 3 sons to the streets and took no nonsense from anyone. Biara put a stack of bloodied hundreds in Mrs. Gable's hand and whispered, "If we aren't back in 2 hours, call the police. Tell them the girl is yours." Leaving Bora was the hardest thing Biara had ever done. It felt like leaving a piece of her own heart in a vinyl booth, but she couldn't take a child into the slaughterhouse. They arrived at the tea house at 4 a.m. It sat adjacent to the blackened, smoking ruins of the Golden Lotus. The fire trucks had gone, leaving behind a skeleton of charred wood and the smell of wet ash. But the tea house was pristine. A traditional structure dropped into the middle of the industrial district, surrounded by a high stone wall. 2 guards stood at the iron gates. They wore suits, earpieces, and expressions of absolute boredom. They straightened up when the black SUV screeched to a halt. They reached for their weapons when Jungi stepped out. He looked like a nightmare. His suit was shredded, his shirt was red with dried blood, and his face was pale as death. But he walked with the stride of a king returning to his castle. "Open the gate," Jungi commanded. The guards hesitated. They looked at each other. They looked at the gun in his hand. Then, slowly, terrified, they punched the code. The iron gates swung open. Biara dragged Jiwoo out of the back seat. She shoved the villainess forward, the barrel of the Desert Eagle pressed against her spine. Jiwoo stumbled, her pristine white coat now smeared with grime. "Walk," Biara said. They moved as a phalanx, Jungi in the lead, Biara covering the rear with the hostage. They crossed the courtyard, ignoring the rain, and kicked open the double doors of the tea house. The room inside was silent. It was a long, low hall lined with tatami mats and paper screens. At the far end, kneeling around a low lacquer table, were 12 men. The council, the elders of the Solpa rings. They were drinking tea from delicate porcelain cups. They were discussing the division of assets. They were discussing the future of the North Side. They stopped when the wind and rain blew into their sanctuary. 12 heads turned. 12 pairs of eyes widened. "Jungi," the head elder said. He was a man of 80, with skin like parchment and eyes like flint. He didn't stand. He just set his cup down. "We were told you were ash." "I am hard to burn, elder," Jungi said, his voice echoing off the wooden beams. "And yet," the elder gestured to his ruined state, "you look like a corpse walking, and you bring—" He looked at Biara. He looked at her dirty apron, her wild hair, the gun in her hand. He curled his lip in disgust. "You bring stray dogs into the House of Silence?" "She is not a dog," Jungi said, stepping forward. "She is the reason I am standing here." "She is a liability," Jiwoo shouted, finding her voice. She twisted in Biara's grip. "Look at him. He is weak. He let a civilian compromise the operation. He let a waitress into our world," the council murmured. The younger members looked at each other, their hands drifting toward the weapons concealed in their jackets. Jiwoo was playing to their prejudices. She was playing to the old code. A code that said outsiders were to be silenced, not crowned. "He broke the law," Jiwoo screamed, desperate now. "He endangered the purity of the syndicate. He chose a peasant over his own blood." "Enough," the head elder said. He looked at Jungi. "Is this true? Did you bring an outsider into our affairs?" "I did," Jungi said calmly. "Then the penalty is death," the elder said. "For both of you." The guards in the corners of the room raised their submachine guns. The air grew heavy, charged with the static of impending violence. Biara's heart hammered against her ribs. She looked at the guns. She looked at the old men who held the power of life and death in their wrinkled hands. She realized then that a gun wouldn't save them. Bullets wouldn't save them. This wasn't a physical fight. It was a cultural one. She shoved Jiwoo to her knees, and she stepped forward. She walked past Jungi. She walked into the center of the room, into the kill box. "You speak of the law," Biara said. She didn't speak English. She didn't speak the street slang Jungi had used in the basement. She spoke high-formal court Korean, the language of kings, of poetry, of ancient diplomacy. It was a dialect so rare, so precise, that half the men in the room probably couldn't speak it correctly. The head elder blinked. His mouth opened slightly. "You speak of purity," Biara continued, her voice ringing out clear and authoritative. "But the first law of the syndicate is not about secrecy. It is about blood. Iron protects iron. Blood protects blood. Is this not the foundation? The room was dead silent. The guards lowered their weapons an inch, confused by the perfect, aristocratic cadence coming from the woman in the dirty apron. It is, the elder said slowly, responding in the same formal dialect. Who are you, child? I am the witness, Biara said. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the phone. And I have brought you the confession of a kinslayer. She plugged the phone into the room's sound system, used for soft music. The speakers crackled. Jiwoo gasped. No, don't listen to her. She's a liar. Biara hit play. The recording filled the room. She wanted the throne. She wanted the war. I refused. So she killed my sister to force my hand. The elder frowned. That was Jungi's voice. That wasn't proof. But Biara let it play. She let it run to the part Jiwoo had said in the motel room. But then she did something else. She played the first file. The one from the basement. The exits are covered. The rats are in the trap. Burn the building down if you have to. No survivors. That is a tactical order, the elder said dismissively. It proves nothing. Listen closely, Biara said. To the background. She turned the volume up. In the background of the recording, faint but audible, was a sound. A rhythmic, mechanical beeping. That is a heart monitor, Biara said. From a hospital room. She looked at Jiwoo, who had gone pale as a sheet. 3 days ago, Biara said, translating the noise into a narrative, Jungi's sister, Bora's mother, was in the hospital for a checkup. Jiwoo visited her. She visited her to threaten her. To tell her to make Jungi accept the crown. Biara pulled up a second file. A voicemail she had found deep in the phone's trash folder while Jungi drove. She played it. I'm sorry, Jungi. She wouldn't listen. She said you wanted peace, so I removed her. I removed the weakness, and now you have no reason to be soft. The voice was unmistakably Yoon Ji-woo's, and the confession was absolute. She hadn't just killed a rival. She had killed a member of the family. She had killed the sister of the boss. Kinslaying, Biara said, the word hanging in the air like a guillotine blade. She spilled the blood of the inner circle to advance her own station. She broke the iron law. She is not a queen. She is a parasite. Biara turned to the head elder. She didn't bow. She stood tall, meeting his gaze with the ferocity of a woman who had killed her own brother to protect a child. I am the one who saved the heir, Biara said. I am the one who carried the dragon out of the fire. I am the one who translated his will when he could not speak. Now I ask you, Elder of the High Table, does the parasite live, or does the syndicate clean its house? The elder looked at Biara. He looked at the dirt on her face, the fire in her eyes, and the absolute mastery of his own language falling from her lips. He looked at Jiwoo, who was shivering on the floor, defeated not by a bullet, but by a waitress with a linguistics degree. The elder turned his cup over. A signal. The parasite dies, he whispered. The guards didn't hesitate. They turned their weapons on Jiwoo, but Jungi stepped forward. No, he said. She is mine. The guards stepped back. Jungi walked to Jiwoo. He looked down at the woman he had once loved, the woman who had turned his world into ash. You wanted the old ways, Jungi said softly. You wanted the brutality. You wanted the dragon. Jiwoo looked up, tears streaming down her perfect face. Jungi, please. I did it for us. There is no us, Jungi said. There is only the dead. He raised the Desert Eagle. Bang. It was over. Yoon Ji-woo fell forward. The silence that followed was heavy, final. The rain of the old code lay bleeding on the tatami mats. Jungi holstered the gun. He didn't look back at the body. He turned to the council. The debt is paid, he said. The traitor is gone. And the outsider? The elder asked, pointing a shaking finger at Biara. She knows our secrets. She knows our codes. She is a loose end, Jungi. We cannot let her walk out of here. Jungi moved. He didn't move to attack. He moved to stand beside Biara. He placed his hand on the small of her back, a gesture of possession and protection so clear it stopped the breath in the room. "She is not an outsider," Jungi said. His voice was iron. "She is the one who deciphered the betrayal. She is the one who protected the bloodline." He looked at Biara. He looked at the woman who had demanded half his empire in a basement and then earned every cent of it in blood. "She is my partner," Jungi declared. "She owns 50% of my vote, 50% of my assets, and 100% of my loyalty." He scanned the room, meeting the eyes of every man at the table. "Anyone who touches her, touches me. Anyone who questions her, questions the dragon. Are we clear?" The head elder looked at Jungi. Then he looked at Biara. He saw the intelligence in her eyes. He saw the strength. He saw the future. He picked up his teapot. He poured a second cup. He pushed it across the table toward Biara. "Sit," the elder said. "The tea is getting cold." Biara looked at the cup. She looked at Jungi. He nodded, a barely perceptible dip of his chin. Biara untied her dirty, blood-stained apron. She let it drop to the floor, covering the blood of the woman who had tried to kill her. She walked to the table. She sat down at the right hand of the devil, and she took a sip. The reign of the queen had begun. 6 months later, the view from the 45th floor of the Han Tower was crystal clear. The rain had finally stopped. Biara sat at the heavy obsidian desk, wearing a tailored emerald silk suit that screamed power. She signed the final document with a flourish. Biara Washington, co-owner. The office door opened and Jungi Han walked in. The limp was gone. The wound in his side had healed into a silver scar only she got to see. He looked less like a corporate shark and more like a king at rest. Holding his hand was Bora. "Auntie B!" The 5-year-old let go and sprinted across the plush carpet. Biara spun her chair, catching the girl in a hug. The wheeze was gone. The terror was gone. Bora smelled like strawberry shampoo and sunshine. "Did you learn your Hangul today?" Biara asked. "Yes," Bora beamed. "And Uncle Jungi taught me how to glare at people until they go away." Jungi shrugged, a playful smirk touching his lips. The press was waiting in the lobby. It is a necessary life skill. He walked over to the desk, resting his hip against the edge. "It is done?" "It's done," Biara said, handing him the thick leather folder. 50% of the Solpa Ring's legitimate assets. Real estate, tech, shipping, it's all in my name. Jungi tossed the folder onto the couch without opening it. "You didn't even look," Biara noted. "I don't need to look. You read the fine print, Biara. I am just the muscle." He reached into his pocket. "I have something for you." Instead of a diamond, he pulled out a piece of wrinkled paper stained with dried brown blood. It was the order pad slip she had given him in the basement 6 months ago. "You kept it," Biara whispered. "I keep my promises," Jungi said softly. "You asked for half the money, half the power, half the empire." He stepped around the desk, pulling her out of the chair. He rested his forehead against hers. "I tried to give it to you, but the math didn't work." "Why not?" "Because I cannot give you half of something that is already entirely yours." He kissed her. It wasn't desperate like the motel. It was slow, claiming, a seal on a deal that would last a lifetime. When he pulled back, Biara looked at the man who had once pointed a gun at her chest. She looked at the little girl drawing breath easily in the corner. She looked at Jungi in the eye and smiled. "I told you I wanted half the empire," she whispered, her hand resting over his heart. "But you gave me the whole world." And that, my dark hearts, is how the Waitress became the queen. Biara didn't just survive the fire. She built a castle from the ashes. It just goes to show, sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is demand what you're worth.